baby. I'll give it to my baby. And that wasn't the first time I had to kick the shit out of Rick James.
I was a little bit of a rapscallion myself in my youth. I remember
Jonathan Davis.
one day I was playing. I was about 7 years old. And I saw the cellar door open just a crack. Now my folks had always warned me, Emo, whatever you do, don't go near the cellar door. But I had to see what was on the other side if it killed me. And I went to the cellar door, and I pushed it and walked through, and I saw strange, wonderful things I had never seen before, like trees,
and the sky,
grass, flowers, the sun. That was nice. The sun. Oh, my folks were very protective of me as I look back. I couldn't even cross the street without them getting all excited
with their friends placing bets.
Yeah, my dad had very strict rules for me because he loved me. Rules like, I couldn't be home until a certain hour. And that type of thing. I was always afraid as a child of the outside world. I was afraid of lightning and thunder. My mom used to say, Emo, there's nothing to be afraid of. And she gave me a little magic wand to ward off the lightning. Turned out it was nothing more than an ordinary 6-foot steel rod. But the psychology is what counts. I knew psychology as a child. I had a lemonade stand. I used psychology. I gave away the first glass of lemonade for free. On the second glass, I would charge $5, because it had the antidote. Yeah, after a while, the lemonade stand folded because I've never had much of a head for figures. Remember once in school, it's painful just to think of it, my teacher said, Emo, what's 5/19 times 4/15? And my brain started to bleed. And she said, take it easy, what's our common denominator? I said, a fondness for little girls, I don't know, Remember once we were taking a test and I was copying this other kid's paper, and I guess the teacher heard my Xerox machine. She said, Emo, am I stupid or were you cheating? I said, yes and no. And she sent me to the principal, and I go to his office, and he says, Emo, Emo, Emo. I said, I'm the one in the middle, you drunken slob. He said, how would you like to repeat the 5th grade? I said, well, I don't know if I could do it exactly. I'll try. He said, I can expel you. I said, you'll have to catch and eat me first. Weirdo. And he says, Emo, you have to go to the school psychologist. I said, why do I have to go to the school psychologist? So he shows me the petition. And I go to the psychologist. He says, what does this ink blot look like to you? I said, it's a bit embarrassing. He said, everyone sees something silly. What does the ink blot look like to you? I said, well, to me it looks like standard pattern number 3 in the Rorschach series to test obsessive compulsiveness, And he gets kind of depressed. I said, okay, it's a butterfly. He cheers up. He says, what does this ink blot look like? I said, it looks like a horrible, ugly blob of pure evil that sucks the souls of men into a vortex of sin and degradation. He said, no, the ink blot's over there. That's a photo of my wife you're looking at. I said, oh, was I far off? He said, no. That's the tragedy of it. This shows you how tricky those guys are. He gives me a chocolate Easter bunny, which I consume, and I think, wait a second, was this a test too? He says, yeah. I said, what does it mean? He said, well, Emo, had you eaten the ears first, you would have been ambitious. Had you eaten the feet first, you would have had an inferiority complex. Had you eaten the tail first, you would have had latent homosexual tendencies. And had you eaten the breasts first, you would have had a latent Oedipal complex. I said, well, go on. What does it mean when you bite out the eyes and scream, stop staring at me? You know. He says, it shows you the tendency towards self-destruction. I said, what do you recommend? He says, go for it.
I love to go to the playground. All the children are jumping and screaming and running around. Because they don't know I'm using blanks.